Yo, we're back with more tales from the Pizzaplex. Let's go! Yesterday we did a summary of the first story in the newest FNaF book, Lally's Game, the first book of Tales from the Pizzaplex. That story was really good, but today we're going to be doing a summary of the second story, and the title story, Lally's Game. Before the book came out, I knew absolutely nothing about the story, so reading this will be an entirely new experience for me. So now, let's just get started. The main character of Lally's Game is Selena. The story begins with her and her fiance Cade on their way to their new house. Selena wonders to herself how she got so lucky. We basically get a few pages telling us that Cade and Selena are both young and attractive and good people besides that too, so like not really important stuff. Selena had apparently been a model since she was 16, but she wasn't planning on continuing, and Cade worked on a computer science job lined up with a top company. They were moving closer to Cade's mother because she had Cade in her late 40s and was now turning 70 this year, so they were moving back to Cade's hometown so they could help her if they needed to, as they were nearby. The two were getting married in mere weeks. The town used to be small, but the tech company Cade had been working for had set up their headquarters in the area, and it was huge, and a lot of people came to town because it opened up a lot of job opportunities and stuff, and malls opened up in the town too. The two had bought a farmhouse on 5 acres of land, but Cade didn't want to live together until after they were married. But they were moving their stuff in now, and the movers made it to the house before even they did, and until after the wedding, Selena was going to be living with Cade's mom. For the next couple pages, Selena is basically just like directing the movers, Ed and Bailey, on where to put everything. One thing Bailey brought in was a dusty old trunk. Selena wasn't happy that it was here. She tried to lift it, but then Cade came in and asked what she was doing. Selena got upset with him back, saying they can afford to buy new stuff and they don't need this old stuff anymore. She didn't want the trunk here. Cade said that they agreed to bring any good stuff and also stuff from their childhood, and Selena thought that was okay, but the trunk was really old and looked like it belonged in a haunted house. She just suggested them putting the stuff into a nicer looking trunk, and Cade joked that he wouldn't make them use it as a coffee table. Later, Selena, Cade, and his mother Janice had dinner together at Janice's house. Janice was a sweet old lady who reminded Selena of her own grandmother. Janice loves ceramic figures and dolls and stuff, which instantly got me thinking about the cover, but it's not really related. Selena was staying in Cade's childhood bedroom, and Janice hadn't changed it at all since he moved out. Cade also had a bunch of action figures and plushies in his room and stuff. 4 days before the wedding, Selena looked at the photo album she had found in Cade's room. The first few pages were normal, but the third was a bit strange. It showed Cade in a blacklight area. The next page had an image of Freddy Fazbear from Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, which she had heard of, but Cade had never mentioned it before. More photos revealed that the blacklight arena was in Freddy's Pizzaplex. Interestingly, not called Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, it's just Freddy's Pizzaplex. And the area was called Lally's Game, which Selena had never heard of. Suddenly, Janice showed up and scared Selena accidentally. Janice joined Selena in looking at the photos, and she said that she had great memories of the Pizzaplex and especially Lally's Game, because it was Cade's favorite game. They turned the page and there was a picture of Lally. Janice laughed, just like looking at the memory, but Selena was unsettled. Janice said that Lally was supposed to be a friend for kids who didn't have their own friends to play with, so basically exactly the same as a lonely Freddy, and Selena even thought a picture of Lally looking up at Cade looked vaguely possessive, but that doesn't go anywhere. One day, Lally had been taken and Cade wasn't sad after that, but rather scared, weirdly enough. Later that day, after Cade came back from work and after they ate dinner, Selena asked Cade about Lally, and she asked why he never mentioned him. He was upset to be reminded of it. Apparently he had bad memories of it because someone got hurt, and he didn't want to talk about it, so he went back inside. Then we cut to Selena and Cade's wedding. A page and a half go by with unimportant information about the wedding and stuff, but right before being pronounced husband and wife, Selena looks into Cade's eyes, and after what happened with the trunk and the thing with Lally's Game, she didn't really trust him for the first time since they'd been together. But after they danced, the feeling went away and stayed away for the following 2 weeks. Or, well, it says 2 weeks, which contradicts the statement by continuing 2 days later. Yeah, whatever. But anyway, 2 days after the wedding, Selena decided to look at the comments and stuff on her website. One comment thanked Selena for helping them keep the old baggage in the past, which reminded Selena about the old trunk in Lally again. She felt like the two things had to be connected. The day the movers brought their stuff to the new house, Cade had told Selena that he would put the trunk in the darkest corner of the attic so she would never have to see it again. Now, Selena was determined to find what was in the trunk. So she went up to the attic to find it. There's a stack of boxes in the corner of the attic, so she looked behind them, and it wasn't there. Cade had lied about where he put the box. So Selena continues searching for the box. She looks in the garage, but she doesn't find it there. She looks in closets around the house and still can't find it. The last place to check was a room they hadn't decided what to do with yet. The room was empty except for a closet, which should have been empty, but it was full of empty boxes and blankets. Selena wondered why, but then she realized it was to hide something. She moved all the boxes and blankets out of the closet and found the box. She tried to open it, but she realized it was locked. She had no idea where the key could be, so she googled how to pick the lock, but then realized she'd be better off just breaking the lock. So she grabs a bunch of tools to help her break the lock. She managed to break it open with 2 screwdrivers. As she began opening the trunk, she heard Cade, though. He got home at the wrong time. Of course he did. Genuinely, I expected him to show up a while ago, but how convenient is it that he comes home right as she opens the lock? Very. If he hadn't, then the whole story wouldn't happen, I guess. So it kind of makes sense, but it doesn't. It doesn't really matter. How convenient. Anyway, Selena goes and finds Cade drenched at the front door. It had been raining. Selena confronts Cade about the trunk, and he asks if she opened it, repeatedly. When she told him she didn't, he ran upstairs as fast as he could, and Selena followed him. Cade went into the room with the trunk and opened it. It was completely empty. Cade started looking around, scared. I feel like at this point you can guess exactly what I was thinking before he even opened the trunk. And obviously you'll see what happens. Selena apologized to Cade for not trusting him, and he said it was okay. But Cade was shaking and he was sweating profusely. So Selena knew everything was not okay. That night, Cade said he was going right to sleep. When Selena lay down next to him, she could tell he was only pretending to be asleep though. And when he thought Selena was asleep, Cade got out of bed. He looked under the bed, and he looked around the room for something. But Selena had no idea what he was looking for. I do, though, and I'm pretty sure you guys do, too. He got back into bed and ended up falling asleep quickly. About an hour later, though, Cade got up and looked around the room again. He did the same thing 3 more times that night. And the same thing happened again every night for about a week, until Selena was tired of it. Literally. Like, he kept waking her up, and she was barely getting any sleep. One night, when he was checking into the bed, Selena finally asked him what he was doing. Cade decided it was finally time to tell her the truth. Cade told Selena that it wasn't true that Lally had been stolen. Apparently, construction scaffolding had one day collapsed and it had broken a hole in the wall during a round of Lally's game. The auditorium had been evacuated and Lally's game closed down because Lally went missing, and it was assumed that he had been stolen. But after that, Cade started seeing Lally everywhere he went. Lally had followed Cade home, and every time Cade saw Lally, he was hiding. So one day, Cade took one of his mom's chests, knowing Lally wouldn't be able to resist hiding inside. So when he was pretty sure Lally was inside, he locked the box. Selena thought that Cade had just made up a fantasy in his head to cope with his favorite game being destroyed, kind of like Mark from Moon Knight, only not as extreme. But this is FNaF, so I think it's pretty clear that Selena is wrong. Selena told Cade a story about something similar that happened to her friend Zoe, who was convinced a purple monster was under her bed, so they quote-unquote trapped it, and her fear of it went away. Kind of reminds me of Purple Guys from FNaF World. She claimed the same happened to Cade, but Cade knew that Lally wasn't in his imagination, and Selena tried to convince him, but Cade decided it was just time to go to sleep. So they did. For the next couple of weeks, nothing happened for the most part. They mostly focused on renovations and stuff, and one night they had a few couples over for dinner. They had a nice night, played charades and stuff, but when Selena went to the garage to get more drinks, she noticed something next to a shop vac near the fridge. It was Lally, and he was staring back at her. Selena understandably got scared, and she rushed to bring the drinks back to everyone else, but after she did, she brought Cade to the garage to show him that Lally was there. When she decided to show him, I instantly knew. Lally was gone, and Cade looked around for about a minute, and then told Selena that they had guests waiting for them. So the next morning, Cade left a note on his pillow telling Selena that he had been called into work. Selena was sure he was lying because he never got called into work on a Saturday. She assumed he was avoiding her because of Lally, so Selena decided to take a bath. Before she got in though, she got the feeling someone was watching her. She looked around and saw no one. While in the bath, Selena couldn't relax. She kept thinking she was hearing sounds all throughout the house. So it was no use. After she got dressed, she looked in every room in the house, but she found no one. She tried to distract herself with work, but it wasn't working, no pun intended. I mean, it actually says that in the book. Weeks went by and Selena kept feeling like she was being watched, even when Cade was around. One day she decided she had to search the house for Lally again. In the middle of her search, she realized she was being stupid looking around like this, so she opened up a new document and typed up all the facts she knew about Lally. She came to the conclusion that either Lally was real or she was losing her mind. She didn't like either option, so she decided to go to Janice's house, where she ended up making cinnamon rolls with her. Selena also asked Janice what Cade liked so much about Lally's game, and Janice told her that she thought it might be because it made him feel special. Maybe he wanted a brother and Lally filled that void. Janice also said that Cade didn't want to share Lally with anyone. Once, a boy from school named Daniel snuck into Lally's game, and Cade was really angry. And that's the only reason he was angry. Daniel didn't even do anything besides sneak into the game. Janice said it was tragic that he died in a horrible accident. Selena tried to ask what accident she was talking about, but Janice didn't answer. So Selena asked how Lally worked, and Janice told her that the kids had to go and hide him themselves. They would obviously know where he is, but it was just pretend. Selena then rushed out of the house to get home. As she was on her way home, she passed Cade's car heading to Janice's house. Selena wondered if he saw her. Usually he wouldn't have, but she wasn't sure if he had this time. When she got home, Selena started packing. She had to leave. She now believed that Cade was doing all this. After Janice said that you had to hide Lally yourself, Selena felt there was no other option, as she was packing up her office. She started hearing thudding and rustling sounds downstairs. Now she knew she had to search the house for Lally again. She checked everywhere on the second floor. No Lally. As she went to check downstairs, she heard a sound from the kitchen. Wherever she checked, there was nothing there. But when she checked the kitchen, she heard a sound from the living room now. She ran to the living room, but it too was empty. She sat down on the couch and questioned what she was doing. Just then, a hand covered her mouth, and Cade shushed her. He was leaning over the back of the couch, and Selena looked at Cade, and everything about him looked like it had been infected and had now gone mad. Cade whispered to Selena that if she upsets Lally, she'll end up in the trunk next. That's very creepy. He removed his hand, but he told her not to speak because she really doesn't want to upset Lally. But Selena whispered an accusation to him that he killed Daniel, but Cade told her that it was Lally. Selena, though, thought Cade had been going mad. She wanted to grab the rolling pin that she had been holding before, but she knew Cade would see if she did. So instead, she just tried to act concerned. She suggested that if Lally was here, they should just leave. But Cade shook his head. So Selena jumped off the couch and grabbed a lamp and smacked Cade across the face with it. Cade fell back, hit his head on the coffee table, and fell to the floor. I'm kind of surprised he didn't die. But Selena started to run toward the kitchen. But as she did, she saw a hint of white. Lally. She ran upstairs, but then realized she should have just gone out the back door. But she heard Cade moving, so she couldn't risk going back downstairs. So she ran into the guest bedroom and jumped into the closet. From under the door, Selena saw a bit of light, which gave the clothes around her a ghostly presence. Then the clothing around her moved, and a whisper came from the darkness. The whisper just said, "Hi," and just like that, Selena just screamed. I think it's pretty clear that Selena decided to hide in the same place that Lally was already hiding, so they just kind of met up with each other. Then we got back to Cade. He wasn't conscious, but he was able to hear the sound of Selena's screams. When he ended up waking up, his head was pounding, and it took him a second, but Cade remembered why he was on the floor. He called out for Selena and ran through the house looking for her. On his way to the guest bedroom, he stopped. He panicked when he saw the closed door of the third bedroom. Cade went into the room and into the closet. He cleared the stuff off of it and opened the trunk. When he did, he was horrified. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. He dropped his head into his hands, but then he heard a whisper from the closet. "The game is only for two." And the words engulfed him and left him in silence. I think it's pretty clear what was in the trunk, right? Then we cut into the future, where Cade is in his new house with his new fiancée, Debbie. He wondered how he could have gotten so lucky again. Debbie was excited to have an attic since she'd never had one before, and she was going to turn it into an art studio. And it's also made clear that a few years has passed because Cade had now become the head programmer for the biggest tech company in the state. He had to move away from Janice, though, but she was okay with that. She told him that he had to move on. Obviously, we know what he has to move on from. Debbie moved a few boxes and noticed a trunk she'd never seen before. She asked what had been in it, and Cade told her it was just some childhood stuff. As they were leaving the attic, Cade looked back at the trunk, which seemed to be looking back at him. Thunder rolled in, and the attic had become pitch black, except two small pinpoints of light peeking up over the top of the old trunk. And that is where the story ends. I personally think this story is even better than Frailty, and if you've watched my summary for Frailty, you know that I love Frailty. But I think this story is just a little bit better. But there's an interesting idea that I had that I think makes a lot of sense. Cade said that Lally killed Daniel, but I don't think that's the case. I think Daniel was killed by the scaffolding falling over into Lally's game arena, and I think Daniel ended up possessing Lally. That to me makes sense because of the line at the end where Lally says the game is only for two, because that's what Cade was saying to Daniel when he snuck into the game. So maybe Daniel possessing Lally followed Cade home, like kind of to like torture him a little bit. And is it just me, or does Lally really remind you guys of the Fred plush, following Cade around and mostly being hidden, like how the Fredbear plush sits behind a car and on the flower and in the sewer, and the trunk being a big part of the story really makes me think it's meant to be a representation of the FNaF 4 box. What's in the box? Well, based on this story, it would make sense to be either the Fredbear plush or the bite victim's body, but given the context, I think it makes the most sense to be the Fredbear plush, since Cade wants to forget about Lally, who seems to be connected to the Fredbear plush. And you may say the box is the pieces of Happiest Day, but remember, the Fredbear plush is the one setting up Happiest Day, so that still makes sense. I might expand on this in my Tales Book 1 theory video that I'll do after the rest of my summaries, but all in all, I'd say this is a fantastic story. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the story, and if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you want to. Tomorrow will be the summary for the final full story in Tales from the Pizzaplex Book 1, and that is Under Construction, which I've heard is really weird, so stay tuned for that video as well as my summary of the epilogue. But anyways, I'll see you guys tomorrow with Under Construction.